Hello, my name is Boris. I'm a data engineer at Dataracity, and today I'll be showcasing a demo on how we do data modeling at Dataracity. I'll be talking about the star schema and different types of fact tables. So on my screen here, we have a typical star schema. It's a bit simpler due to the demo purposes, but this is how a typical star schema would look like. It's a centralized fact table surrounded by different dimension tables. In the fact table, there's measurable events and measures. In the dimension tables, there's descriptive data and business context. A very important thing for a star schema is that the relationship towards from the fact table to the dimensions should always be one to many. Now, why do we use a star schema? Star schema is very popular and it's for a reason. Star schema is very simple. So the simplicity is one thing, and then another thing is that it gives out really good query performance. Also, if you want to work with Power BI, it's additionally good because Power BI wants a centralized model and it wants to filter all kinds of measures based on different descriptive fields from the dimension tables. And the query performance is really good because there's no other relationships between the fact and dimensions. It's dimension directly to fact table. Now, let's look at how we actually model our dimension tables. So this is a typical dimension we model, and we model all of the dimensions with a slowly changing dimension type 2, which is basically, that means that we track history for every dimension. No matter what type of dimension or what type of data is in it, we always track history of it. So we actually can match the record's date to an actual descriptive field or business context. The logic to this dimension is pretty simple, so it's just we close rows that have been changed, and then we insert new rows that have not been entered yet or that have been changed to the new ones. Now, that aside, another thing I also wanted to talk is about the different fact tables in data modeling. Now, very popular fact table is the white traditional Kimball-style fact table, but we decided to use something different. So what we use at Dataracity is a tall, narrow fact. And what that basically means is it's a fact table that all the measures from the whole model are put into two fields. And the two fields are these two fields. So we have a measure description and measure values, and everything from the whole model is put inside here. Now, to do this, we actually need to have a centralized mapping of all measures. So instead of the columns being measures in our table, we'll have different measures in our rows, which means we actually need an master Excel mapping where we will maintain all of the measures that will be put that are already inside, need to be added, or need to be removed. Now, how do we populate the fact table? Well, first we actually take a staging fact table and we populate it with the transactional table we want to take data from. We unpivot all that data and this is the store pack that does that, but with this store pack we actually populate this staging fact table. And then this staging fact table, along with all the dimensions we have and we need for that specific subset of data, gets joined and all of that gets inserted into the fact table. This is the centralized fact table, and everything from the company or data product would be put inside this fact table. So this is a star schema model that would be centralized for all of the data from the product or company that is being worked on. Now, why do we use a tall, narrow fact table instead of the traditional Kimball style? So the traditional Kimball style has proven that is good, reliable, and it works. However, we actually found out that there are some things that the tall narrow fact table does better than the traditional Kimball wide fact table. For example, the traditional Kimball table has a field for every measure, which means the table might be very wide. That makes issues for certain ETL, code maintenance, scalability. It could get quite hard to make changes. Tall and narrow fact table is really good for Fabric. Currently, we are using Microsoft Fabric, and it actually does complement each other well, as because Fabric has a columnar storage engine, and adding extra rows is much more beneficial than adding extra columns. Also, the narrow tall fact table, all the measures are centralized, but also they can be added very quickly. So, an issue with the Kimball style is that adding KPIs in an enterprise scale could be a bit hard, but with this style, there is a mapping, and the mapping can just be maintained, and measures can be added. So it's much faster, much more scalable, and easier to do it with this type of tall narrow fact table. Another thing is the ETL. The store procs are much easier to use with this tall narrow fact table, and yeah, there are quite a lot of reasons where the tall narrow actually beats out the traditional wide Kimball style. So performance, but also scalability and just maintenance. It's a lot of reasons where the tall narrow actually beats out. And that's pretty much all for this demo. Thank you for watching. Bye.